who I promised that our difficulty getting the slide set up was not some like clever exercise in design. We really just don't know how to work Windows. But it worked out, and we're here. We have a couple of exciting things today. We are going to go over our first assignment. We are going to talk about the exercise and the surveys you guys filled out. We're going to talk about design principles. But first we have some housekeeping. So who's up first? Kelsey.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting week of product design class experience. What is that? Okay, so as we kind of alluded to last week, we're going to be hosting these things called jam sessions, and they're going to be about every other week, and we'll always tell you when they're happening. And this week it's going to be at FarmLogs. So we're going to be having it this Wednesday from 6 to 8 at our office. And we're just going to be going over like the basics of Sketch. If you guys haven't downloaded Sketch yet, you have a Mac computer, it'd be a good time to do it. If you want to get more into it and like learn the basics, I'll be helping you guys learn that on Wednesday. And also the jam sessions are all only like not only for learning stuff like this, but also to get feedback and work with other people and just like kind of like another cool space other than like campus to work on your projects. But this week we have like a minimal assignment, and so we're going to be diving into Sketch. And that's basically it, yeah. Oh, what? Oh yeah, okay, so also we're going to be hosting office hours in the weeks that we aren't doing jam sessions, and in order to sign up for that, we've created a spreadsheet. There'll be individual office hours with myself, Sam, Carson, and Imad. And we'll be posting the link to sign up for those office hours on Canvas/Piazza. What? Am I good? Okay. And then for attendance, today, the question of the day is listed on Canvas. I'm not sure how this works, though. It's like Imad knows more than I do about that.
What's up, guys? So I'm going to talk about attendance and some updates to the syllabus. So I mentioned last week that we'll be taking attendance every week, and the way we'll be doing it is through Canvas. So if you go to Canvas right now, there should be a quiz on Canvas, and it'll ask you what's the word on the board, and it's potato. So multiple choice, just pick it. The quiz closes at 4:30, so just make sure that you do it in like the next 20 minutes. It should take you like a second. But yeah, that's how we'll be taking attendance. Yes?
It's locked.
Yeah. Okay. Carson's gonna look at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, at some point, whenever it goes live, just click on potato. So updates to syllabus. First, I wanted to follow up from a question from last week. So I don't remember who asked it, but it was basically what happens if you don't score like 100% on an assignment, and do we take another assignment in place of that? So how that's going to work is we actually tweak the grading a little so that we take your top 5 grades now. So if you can still do 5 assignments and be fine, or if you don't feel like you felt like you didn't get a good grade on one, you can do 6 and we'll take your top 5 grades. So that's one update to the syllabus. Some other more updates to the grading system are, one, in Canvas we added dates to all the assignments. So now you can see at a time like when an assignment is assigned, and then it'll always be due the next Monday. So we'll remind you in class that there's going to be assignment due for tonight, basically. So what that means is like today we'll be assigning an assignment, and that means it'll be due next Monday at 11:59 p.m. basically. And Sam will talk about the assignment we'll assign today, but those dates should be up on Canvas now. Another update, we added our system for grades for the assignment. Basically how that works is there's 3 tiers. One is the just X tier, which is you didn't turn anything in, and that's 0. Another tier is check, and that's a 70% of your grade, and that basically translates to you turned something in, but you didn't put an effort, so it's check, and that's a 7%. And then there's check plus, which means you did your work and you put in effort, and you get 100. So the distribution of the grades will not be like some people will get check pluses and some people will get checks. Almost everyone should be getting a check plus, but a check is just to let you know that like you're putting in work, or you turn in work, but you're just not trying, obviously, and we don't want to fuck up your entire grade, but like you won't pass the class if you keep turning in work like that. So just a heads up, that's how grading is going to work. And yeah, that should be all the updates for the syllabus. And then Sam will talk about.
I have one more quick thing. sorry, one more quick thing about the jam sessions, just to remind you, if you don't come to all the classes, that's fine. But you can come to the jam sessions to make up for classes. So you have to come to, what was it, 10 out of the 13 classes to get an A? Yeah?
Are the jam sessions always going to be on Wednesdays?
Yes, they will always be on Wednesdays, but it'll most likely be starting more at 6:30 to 8:30 instead of 6 to 8 like it is this week.
And do you have to be there for like the whole time, or can you be there?
So the question was, do you have to be there the whole time, only a portion of the time? We'd like you to stay the whole time, but if you get what you need out of it, you can end up leaving early.
Do you have like a weekly conflict?
What if we have a weekly conflict? So you don't have, the jam sessions are still totally optional, just to make sure you guys know that, like, you don't have to come to every jam session, but if you don't come to class and come to a jam session instead, that can make up for the class. Does that help answer your question? Okay, cool. I think that's it for jams.
I know that's a lot to take in. It's all in the syllabus, updated. And just like a note on the jam sessions and the grading, we're not trying to make this like a super hard class. We actually want it to be pretty straightforward in terms of getting a good grade. So if you have any questions, just come talk to us. If you have concerns about the attendance or anything, come talk to us. Those office hours are up there so that you can come meet with us outside the jam sessions. If you still want to work with us, and we think that'd be really valuable. All right. Jam sessions. We did a survey, and thank you for all you guys who filled out the survey. We're going to be doing a few of these. There's actually one at the end of today. We had a few concerns we wanted to address real quick that we heard from you guys. One was that you're a little nervous that there's going to be coding in this class because it's software design and you don't really know how to write code. I actually think learning how to code is really useful for designers, and there's some concepts in code that are actually really useful in design. But you do not have to learn how to write code for this class. If you never write code in your life, you can still do very well in this class. And design tools are actually getting much, much better. So even in a career, understanding code is really useful, but not 100% required. So don't worry about it. What was the other concern? Oh, there's concerns about like maybe this is going to be too much work. It's only a 1 credit course, and you guys are all here electively. It's not part of like your grade for your diploma, right? So the assignments are going to be pretty straightforward. Like they're not crazy, and in fact they're going to be pretty small. So if you just want to get like a good enough grade in here and learn and do the assignments, it's super possible. We're going to be talking a lot about all these other things you can do, like the jam sessions and stuff. All these other things you can do for the assignments, and that's just for people who really want to take this class as like a kickoff point to start doing real design. But it's not necessary. You can do a pretty small amount of work and do very well. Are there any other questions about stuff like that? Survey questions? Yeah.
Not survey questions, but like you guys are talking about doing sketch during jam sessions, but I don't have a Mac, so
Right.
I was using Figma instead. It's also during composite when it was.
Yeah, the question was about jam sessions and using Sketch. If you don't have a Mac, what should you do? Can you use Figma? Figma is our definite recommendation if you don't have a Mac. It's on the web, so if you have Windows or Linux or Mac, you can use it. It's free. They're pretty similar. These tools are what we use every day, but they're really not that complex. If you've used Photoshop, it's a lot easier than Photoshop. It's just click a button, draw a rectangle, put text in. That's the easy part of design. So don't sweat it too much. I think you'll be fine. Other questions? Call out if you have one. I have bad glasses. Okay. Why don't you go up here? We wanted to talk about one other thing that we found in the survey, and that was a concern that, you're not a designer, and this is a design class. And we think we have a resource that might actually be pretty helpful to address that.
Yeah. So over the past week, all of us have been talking to all the students, figuring out like what they're excited for the course and what they're not. And a lot of the feedback that we've heard is a lot of people feel that they're not qualified to be designers, or feel like they're not creative enough or technical enough, or whatever the term is. And we just want to address that shouldn't be an issue. I can speak from personal experience that even when I'm doing work currently, I still don't feel comfortable in my work, and I still feel like there's a lot more I can do. But I think the best way that I got around that, and I think Sam also, and everyone else also echoed this, was just to do work, and that's the best way to jump over that hurdle of not feeling like you're a designer. So we wanted to show a video by Ira Glass, who's a host of a podcast, if you've seen it or heard of it, called This American Life. But it's a really good video. You'll see what it's about. Yeah.
Nobody tells people who are beginners, and I really wish somebody had told this to me, is that all of us who do creative work, like, we get into it, and we get into it because we have good taste. But it's like there's a gap, that for the first couple years that you're making stuff, what you're making isn't so good, okay? It's not that great. It's trying to be good. It has ambition to be good, but it's not quite that good. But your taste, the thing that got you into the game, your taste is still killer, and your taste is good enough that you can tell that what you're making is kind of a disappointment to you, you know what I mean? A lot of people never get past that phase. A lot of people at that point, they quit. And the thing I would just say to you with all my heart is that most everybody I know who does interesting creative work, they went through a phase of years where they had really good taste, they could tell what they were making wasn't as good as they wanted it to be. They knew it felt short. It didn't have this special thing that we wanted it to have. And the thing I would say to you is everybody goes through that. And for you to go through it, if you're going through it right now, if you're just getting out of that phase, you got to know it's totally normal. And the most important possible thing you could do is do a lot of work. Do a huge volume of work. Put yourself on a deadline so that every week or every month you know you're going to finish one story. Because it's only by actually going through a volume of work that you're actually going to catch up and close that gap. And the work you're making will be as good as your ambitions. It takes a while. It's going to take you a while. It's normal to take a while, and you just have to fight your way through that. Okay?
Audio was that good on that clip, but we'll post the slides later if you want to watch it. It's really good. It just basically says, this takes time. Like, learning everything takes time. If you're in this class, it's because we expect you to be new at this. We're going over a lot of basics. So don't worry, we're going to help you out, and lean on everybody else too. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. We're going to get into a little content today. What is good design? We talked about what design is yesterday, right? It's a bunch of decisions. It's the decisions we make when we're making a thing, the thing that might end up in a museum someday. Design is the form that we make, and it's specifically form that fits in a context and in an environment. And the better it fits in that environment, the better a design it is. We're going to be going through what good design is every week, but this is just sort of an overview to give you like a fundamental baseline so we can talk about it for the rest of the semester. Remember this? This is a form, or not form, this is the context. This is a kitchen at 8 a.m., and this is our user who's in the kitchen, who likes tea, and we're trying to figure out what we could possibly put here to address this design problem. And we talked about all the different teapots that might be able to go into that kitchen for that user to solve her problem. And that those are the things that we're making. We're making the teapots. The decisions that go into making that teapot are the decisions we're going to be making this semester. And there are a lot of tools that we're going to be using to make these, but what's really the most important tool is how you think. So how do we think about making something good? What do we use when we have to make a decision? That's what we're talking about today. This is going to be like a toolbox of say, I want to use this metric to decide if I'm going to do it this way or that way. And there's something else that we're going to be talking about today. This is super important. This is another thing that's going to be coming up again and again, is critique. This is like the hardest part. I know you can talk to any of these other people in here. But critique is a really important part of design because it's getting criticism and feedback on the things that you make. Has anybody ever had the experience where you make something and you think it's really good, and then you look at it 3 months later and say, oh my God, that sucks? A lot of you. Sometimes I think of critique as like a shortcut to that. They have good taste, but you've been so focused on the details that you can't see what's wrong. So trusting somebody to give you good critique and then taking action on it is a pretty important deal. But critique is not just about like, I don't like this, I don't really feel like it's good. It's not just opinions. It's definitely not an argument. The things we're going over today are tools for critique. When you give critique, these are what we want you to use to give good feedback. Okay. I think the first thing that all good design has in common, right, is that it's useful. It has to do a thing, unlike art, right? I had these interns this summer. They were awesome. And the first project, we just sort of set them loose and said, what do you guys want to make? They built a thing, and it was really, really cool. It had like these super dope animations where you clicked a button, and then the text went behind it, and then a check mark flipped up, and it checked the box. And then they got in the room for critique, and we said, this is really cool, but what we needed to do was address this problem, selection problem, and this doesn't actually do it very well. Like, it doesn't actually finish the job you started. You kind of got distracted by all the design stuff, like how it looks stuff, and we didn't actually solve the job. It's weirdly easy to forget that. So that's gotta be number one, right? I mean, these aren't in any specific order, but useful design is pretty fundamental. These are the teapot examples. They're all useful in their own ways, and obviously if I were to ask which one of these is most useful, the answer would be whichever one suits the context that we're talking about. But here's some examples of some useful ones. See the one with the orange handle? That's a really lightweight teapot. That means you can take it camping, and it's really nice because it doesn't weigh you down. This one here, the electric kettle, is really useful because it boils water really quickly, and you don't have to turn on the stove and have all this other stuff. So the speed is a really important factor here. We took a survey with you guys this week, and we asked you for a bunch of useful stuff. There were a lot of really good answers. Thank you for replying to this. Band-Aid, money is useful. I super agree with that. Remote control, this is really useful. Umbrellas are useful. How would you guys describe something that's useful, besides just saying that it's useful? Like, what are some attributes of useful objects?
Makes things easier.
Makes things easier to use, like makes things easier. That's a great one.
They solve problems.
Solves a problem. Perfect. Multifunctional. So it does a lot of different things. All really good. Yeah, I think those are great. It's going to be kind of hard what the difference between some of these things are, but here's some other ways you can measure it. Functional, we talked about already. I like multifunctionality. Speed is a big thing. Accuracy. Reliability, like, okay, did it once, but is it going to do it ever again? And again, these all sort of seem obvious maybe to you, but every time you make a decision in your design work this semester, I kind of want you to have these things in the back of your head. Like, is this something that's going to work every time, or is it just going to work once? Is this something that the user is going to be able to do quickly or not? And of course, our examples here are with teapots so that you kind of have a sense of design in general, but this all applies, obviously, to digital product design. There's another one here. I think this is sort of where we kind of get designing. Usable. Can anybody point out a very usable aspect of these teapots? Something that makes it maybe user-friendly? The handle, yeah. That's a great example because if you had to grab a boiling hot teapot that technically boiled water, you would burn yourself and have to go to the hospital. That's a really good one. Yeah?
The spout.
The spout, how so?
You don't have to take off the hot top of your hand, like sort of try and boil it. So you feel like you're directive to pull the teeth or the water from.
Yeah, the spout. I mean, you could just have one hole. It would still boil the same amount of water at the same speed. But having a separate spout for the purpose of pouring and one for putting water in, that definitely makes it user-friendly. Yeah? The material, yeah. How so?
Because if it's metal, for example, it'll heat up the water quicker. Versus ceramic could be something that holds the heat for longer.
Yeah, totally. I think that's sort of like speed and functionality we talked about. It's also something that makes it convenient. Like, remember that context? This is the morning time. I don't know about you guys. I rush in the morning, so if it's makes something go more quickly, then that's pretty good. Actually, my teapot, I have one at home. It looks like the one on the right, halfway up. It's like a little percolator. And when I pour out the tea, if I pour it too fast and it's too full, it kind of drips out the sides and like runs down and drips on my countertop. I don't want to give you the impression that design is about like silly things like that, because I still have this teapot and I still like it. My teapot's very functional, and it actually is very delightful, as you'll see later, but its usability is not so good. Any other ideas about what other useful things we have here? Notice that some of these handles are insulated, right? That's a pretty useful feature. Does anybody know what an affordance is? Yeah?
What's something about, like a characteristic about an object that like, hard to describe. Something about an object that like suggests something about how it's used.
That's a great definition. It's something about an object that suggests how it's used, right? So you probably don't have to read an instruction book to understand how to use this teapot. Actually, the one on the right, on the bottom, I think I might. I don't think that's very usable because I only think I know where the water comes out of that one. I'm not super sure. But all the rest have these affordances. As she said, you know where to grab it, you know where the water goes, you know where the water comes out. I wish all software were like that, but it's not. Has anybody ever read the book, The Design of Everyday Things? Yeah? I would all recommend it to you guys. It's probably the one book I'd recommend for like getting introduced to design. It's not necessarily about software. It's by this guy named Donald Norman, who works in Chicago, I think. And there's a thing called Norman doors, which you've probably all experienced, I've experienced today, where you try to go in a door and there's a handle on the outside, and because of that, you think you can pull it to go through it, and it turns out it's a push door, or vice versa. It's amazing how many little things in our lives don't actually suit the user that has to actually use them. I mean, they're functional, they work. The door blocks air, or whatever doors do. This is a cover of his book. Actually, it's not updated, it's supposed to be a book cover, but it's on the cover. It's called A Teapot for Masochists. Can anybody tell me why this teapot might not be very usable in the back? Yeah, you would burn yourself if you tried to use this teapot. I think it's funny. It's a great thing for a cover of a book because he's saying, look, this is a teapot. The form is there. It looks nice. Boils water. And again, it's like pretty disastrous results if you actually try to use it. We didn't do a lot of survey results for usability last week, but here's some things I think probably have to do with usability. Simplicity. Man, you're going to be hearing a lot about this semester. Making things simple has so many benefits, not just in usability, but in functionality, because there's fewer things that can break. And when we talk about delight and aesthetics, simple things often are more beautiful. But the cognitive load that it takes to understand objects is actually a lot, especially if the object is not the thing you're thinking about right now. For example, this is something I'm using, but most of what I'm thinking about is talking to you guys. So if I have to think at all about which button to press on here, it's going to be a problem. So making things really simple and obvious, that's what we were talking about with the affordances, right? Matches the real world. This isn't really one that happens a lot of teapots, but when you're building software, often the first step is understanding the world that the person who you're building it for lives in, and then matching your software to that, using the same terminology, using the same modeling. So we're going to get into that in a little bit, but that's definitely something that makes it more usable. Here's an interesting aspect of one of these teapots. That glass one is really cool because I can see the teapot, the water as it's boiling, right? What happens if I drop that teapot though and it breaks? That's not very usable. Some of these have whistles on them so that when the water is boiling, I can tell that my water is ready. And that's actually pretty nice. So we're confirming that when you do something right, that it works. And when you don't do something right, it doesn't like ruin your entire day. It's pretty forgivable. It's okay. You can boil this water, you drop the teapot, you dent the teapot, it's not the end of the world. You shouldn't have dropped it, but people make mistakes all the time. When we do usability tests, you will see. Well organized and consistent. This is another one that doesn't really apply to teapots. Again, we're starting on teapots. But designing software is complicated. It's complex. There's a lot that goes on, and if you're an engineer, you know that. But making it easy for users is not easy. In fact, that's sort of what we're all here to do, right? Just make things simpler so other people don't have to think. So we're gonna be looking at the work this year and saying, is it well organized? Is it clear? Is it consistent? Does something that looks some way over here look the same way over here? And in general, it probably should, because that way you have less for people to worry about. Again, pretty straightforward, but these slides are going to be published to you guys, and this is sort of like your checklist to go through every time you have an app. Something called heuristics, where you can go through and say, does this app meet each of these qualities? And these are those qualities. All right, here's sort of the fun part. This is what I think some people think design is, even though those other two are definitely design. Good design should be delightful. What are some examples of delightful design for you guys? Yeah.
iPhone 6s.
iPhone 6s. Should have said no Apple products. No, it's delightful. I have a 5S. Why do you like your iPhone?
Why?
Yeah.
It's like smooth,
Yeah, smooth.
and I like the touch screen.
Yeah, it looks pretty nice too, doesn't it? There's some funny looking phones out there. Yeah. Say that again, a little louder. Yeah, useful we covered in the visual appealing part. It has to be beautiful, right? We used an example of a painting last week, but that's pretty simplistic. There are a lot of things that I think are beautiful. There are a lot of like hovering Apple lights facing me right now. Apple computers look good.
I was gonna say the application Slack, it just is intuitive to use, it makes sense, and I like how there's the little hidden gems inside of the application, that people wouldn't even notice.
Yeah, he said Slack, which is a communication tool we use at work too. There's these little gems hidden in the application that are they're nice, they feel good. I think was it on Twitter when you heart something on the web, there's this explosion of little confetti. I don't know if you could call that beautiful in the same way that a Monet would be beautiful, but it's fun. It makes you kind of feel good. That's what designers are sort of here to do. Is take things beyond just functionality, right? Make them feel good. I think some of these are more delightful than others. The one in the middle is the one I mentioned last time, with the blue handle and the little red bird. That's like a $300 teapot from Michael Graves, I think, who spoke at U of M. It's designed really well. It's supposed to look really good. It's like a postmodern style. Everybody has their own taste, obviously, but hopefully we can convince you that some of these delight factors are really not as subjective as you might think. Does anybody have a favorite teapot up here that gives them delight? Yeah. Bottom left? Why is that?
It's different from the other ones where the handle is connected on both sides and it's connected to the spout directly and it just looks nice, I guess.
Yeah, I think it just looks nice. It's probably good enough. It's got a cork handle. That's kind of a nice feel too, right? Yeah.
Lionel Richie teapot.
Yeah.
Because it's funny.
Yeah.
And what other teapot is funny?
Yeah, exactly. Hello, is it tea you're looking for? I think that's really cool. That's exactly why it's on there. Yeah.
Top right, the ceramic looking one.
Yeah.
It's very clean and very it's just a crisp design.
Yeah.
Probably not super practical.
Yeah, it's I think it might be cast iron, although that might be the one down here. It's well proportioned, right? It's got some very clean lines. It's nice looking. It's got a nice texture. Any other favorites? This is one of my favorites. I think it looks really cool. Kelsey was calling it the Darth Vader of teapots.
Or the iPhone 7.
What? Or the iPhone 7 teapot. Yeah, iPhone 7 teapots. I think it looks awesome. It's very simple. It looks really cool. But my favorite part about this teapot, the part that gives me the most delight, is not actually how it looks. It's how it sounds. My roommate had one of these a couple years ago, and it's got this 3-tone train whistle. So it literally sounds like a train is coming through your apartment when the sound goes off. It's really cool. And it makes me smile in the morning, and almost nothing can do that. That's one of my favorites. This is the one that was mentioned already. It looks really cool, but again, it's not just the look of this teapot that I really like. It's cast iron. Does anybody have cast iron cookware? Inherited maybe, a few of you? It's heavy. It's so heavy. And when you pick up that lid, it's kind of hard to pick up the lid. When you put it down, it goes clunk. I don't know why, it kind of sounds silly to say, but it's nice. We actually, in our design room, use sound effects, like cartoony sound effects all the time to describe how things are made. It kind of sounds cheesy, but those things make people feel good. And ideally, we can do that. Funny, too. I actually don't think this looks that nice, but like you said, it makes me smile. Like, how do you know if something is delightful or not? Well, it depends on who's supposed to be using it. I don't know if this would be my teapot. Maybe it would be, though. But if it fits our user, then it's a pretty good teapot. These are the things that you guys thought were delightful based off the survey. High heels, jewelry, paintings, flowers, Rubik's Cubes, an organized bookcase. Feel that. We talked about beautiful, right? That's going to be a little tough to decide, but simplicity and beauty go hand in hand. What about genuine and honest? Those are the same thing. Does anybody have an idea about what it might mean for an object to be genuine or honest? Any takers? I think for me, we got, I hate to pick on Lindsley, but we got these chairs in our office that are clear. And they do kind of look cool, and they do work. But the material of the clear plastic kind of makes it seem like there's not a chair there at all, even though there totally is a chair right there. And it kind of makes it seem like nobody's going to sit on it because there's this beautiful thing that can't be scratched. But if you have keys in your back pocket, you're going to really kind of ruin the chair. So to me, like a wooden chair that's just sitting there, maybe not the like curviest, coolest chair, is a little bit more honest about what it's there to do. The material sort of suits the use, and it's more than just functionality. It's the aesthetics of something that is sort of being honest about what it's there for. It's kind of a tough one. Funny we talked about, that's delightful. Another theme that we're going to be talking a lot about this semester, so when you're using this as a checklist, something to think about is the details. This is so hard, I think, for early designers to think about because getting the details right just takes a lot of practice. That Ira Glass video is so true. But the details of something, when they're just right, when they just have the right feel in your hand, or when they move well, can make a huge difference about how somebody feels about. That's something that you make. This one's a little bit silly, but I don't think it is. I think this is actually something people don't talk about a lot. Good design, I think, should be good. We'll do that in a second. Sometimes people make designs that do a job really well, and they're easy to use, and they give people delight when they're using them, and then they make that person lonely or more alienated from the people that they are supposed to be talking with. Or a piece of furniture that helps you sit down, and it's easy to sit down on, and you like sitting down on, but required wiping out a rainforest to create. This is going to be tough for us, I think, but I think it's especially important in software. Sometimes we just have these ideas of things we want, and it's enough for us to make the design do the thing we wanted it to do, but we don't think about what the implications of that would be exactly. And I'd encourage you guys to start thinking about that, because a lot of the things that we admire out in the world aren't necessarily forces for good, and it's a good idea to be paying attention to that. Are they actually helping people forge better relationships? Are they making people healthier? Like, do our computers make us more healthy or not? I think it's a pretty open question. Are the things that you're going to make long-lasting? Are they going to go away pretty soon? Okay. These are the things that you guys said were well-designed. A lot of these things are like things we touch and use on our bodies all the time. Glasses, pens, moleskins. Did we miss anything? Anything about good design? What do you guys think? That's pretty funny, yes. Talked about that already. I want to make one point really quickly about all these like metrics. These are just sort of like helpful guidelines, and we're going to hold you pretty close to these throughout the semester when you're doing your work. But these are not set in stone. I think the only like true fundamental thing about whether a design is working or not is if it fits the situation. So if she, your user, whoever it is, likes it, and it works in that environment, then it works. And if her preference is for things that are way too complicated and are ugly, then maybe simple and beautiful isn't what you should be designing for. So basically, something we talk a lot about, making a case for something. You're gonna have to have reasons for everything you do for the most part in this class. And if you can make a case that it suits the environment, even though it doesn't fit those things, that's okay. Any questions or thoughts on any of this stuff before we move on? Okay. Last week we asked you to do an optional. Oh, sorry. Question.
Oh, I had a question. I was just curious. How would you say your design is changed by the context of how you work at Pharma? Most of your audience are farmers, correct?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. How does my design change now that I'm working with farmers? That's an awesome question. Farmers are a lot like us, so there's not a ton of huge changes, but here are a couple. One, farmers tend to be on the go when they're using their design, so it has to not work just on a computer. We actually want to put a lot of our emphasis on mobile designs that work well no matter where you are. We actually have some of our mobile engineers at PharmaLogs who joined us today, sitting in the front, right there. So the work that Damien and Christian are doing is really important because they're making decisions out in the field. Some other things about our users. They tend to be older. A lot of farmers are people who aren't used to using technology necessarily, so we have to design big type, more big type. They're using phones outside because they're farmers, right? So things get dusty, there's a lot of glare and finger smudges on their devices. Those are a few. I'll think of more, but those are a few things that are probably specific to us. Probably the biggest one is just like domain knowledge. Something that you guys might not find very usable makes a lot of sense to them because they already know the words we're using because they've been doing this their whole life, right? We're not making apps for people who are like getting into farming. These are people who are professionals at what they do. So when we do user testing, sometimes we do it with people in coffee shops, but we try to do as much as we can with actual farmers because the things that don't make sense to some of us totally make sense to them and vice versa. Good question, thank you. Any others? All right, cool. This was an optional one last week. Want to pick 3 objects, one delightful, one useful, one that's both. Thank you for those who submitted your responses. This week, this is an actual assignment. You don't have to do all the assignments, but this is one that you can do. The majority of you hopefully will do. This is all going to be online. You should get this on the website. This is going to be a million places, so you don't need to worry about writing it down necessarily right now. We want you to write a paragraph critique. There's no format for this. You can just write a paragraph about an object. It can be any object. It can be something that you think is well designed, something that's poorly designed. We want you to talk about what's good about the design and what could be improved and why. So when you say why, you can't just say because I want it to be. Try to use the stuff in the slides, right, to make your case, make your point. You're going to want to try to include who you think it was designed for, because if you don't have that user in mind, then you're not going to be able to properly critique it. And you can just guess. And it can be any object. Any questions about this? Yeah?
You turn it in on Canvas?
Yeah, turn it in on Canvas as a PDF or any. Okay, details will be up there later tonight. It'll be due a week from this evening. And again, you don't have to do it. If you miss this one, you can make up. There's others you can do. Check this out. Okay. I have one more thing I want to talk about a little bit, since we have about 10 minutes of time. We talked a little bit about what design is. Now we talked about what good design is. And this is just the last little bit before we start getting our hands dirty. How do you make good design? And you don't just want to half-ass it. Although that can be useful sometimes. There are some patterns that you want to use that are going to hopefully more reliably get you to the right answer. And we're going to go over that a little bit. But process is this kind of like controversial thing. Everybody has their own process. There are a ton of design agencies that like build their own models of process. There's a lot of blog posts about this. It's pretty flexible, but there's some basic points I want to make. This is what you get when you Google process, design process. Oh my god, so intense. There are like a million models, like I said, and there are a bunch of different diagrams. They all use different vocabulary, by the way. So we've been talking about product design for a while, but if you hear somebody talking about user experience design, it's like the same exact thing. There's just a lot of that, and I wish I could make it easier immediately for you, but we're going to talk about terms during the semester. One thing that I think you will notice about a lot of these is that there's a lot of circles up there. Iteration is something that I think you're probably going to hear a lot in other classes as well, but a lot of these are sort of circular, they sort of feed back on themselves. Do not need to worry about writing those down. I'm going to give you a couple examples. You don't need to worry about these either. This is one that just sort of walks you through like a winding chutes and ladders step in the process. The orange stuff is like learning about what you're doing, the green stuff is trying to do it, and the blue stuff is making sure it works, et cetera, et cetera. This is one from a book called Sprint, a recent book from Google Ventures. It does a lot of design writing. They are talking about first mapping the world that your users are in, then sketching some stuff, deciding which ones you want to double down on, prototyping out the one you choose, and then testing it to see if it worked. Here's another one called Double Diamond from the Design Council in UK. Discover what the problem is. Define the problem. Then you get a problem definition. Then you can develop the problem. Then you deliver it. Like, I know, these are just a bunch of words. What do you guys think these all sort of have in common? Do you see any patterns with all these design processes? Yeah?
You have to keep trying again, so it's like iteration.
Yeah, iteration. Totally. That's definitely a big one. Yeah?
Like failing and then learning what's wrong and like replanning and trying again.
Yeah, adjusting, failing, retrying things. You?
They want you to actually interact with the people who are going to be using it before you start designing it.
That's a huge one. Interact with the people who are going to be using it before you start designing it. Definitely. You got this?
Related question. How do you know when you're done?
Oof. That'll be a different lecture. I have no idea. It's tough, but you know, we're actually going to be talking about like testing the things you make, and if they work, you know, if they suit the thing, then it's actually really hard. I mean, I've been working on FarmLog for 4 years, and I'm still not done. So I'll let you know when it happens. Any other similarities you found here? We got time. This is a bad idea. Actually, it can be really fun, and I do this on like my own project sometimes. But there are a couple patterns. You guys are right. This is how I would say my process. Like if I have to put this is what I would like take a screenshot of and put on a website, and then it would show up in Google like search results when you search for image like design processes. It's just a simple version, but I think it covers pretty much all these things. What's the problem? Then you make a thing, and then you decide if it worked. You know, this is kind of like the scientific method, right? Like you have this hypothesis about how something's going to go, then you design a test, and you say if it works, it'll work, and if it doesn't, it won't. And then you actually run the test, and you have to be like brutally honest with yourself, saying, okay, did I actually get results or not? I think there's a couple important things here. I'm gonna skip straight to it. One, what you set up at the top. The problem comes first. So here's an example of a bad design process. Oh, I've got this cool idea. I'm going to make it, and then I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to see if people buy it. That's the wrong order, right? That's make a thing, did it work, what do people want? What's the problem we're trying to solve? Another example of a bad design process would be, I'm going to learn about what people want to do, and then I'm going to ask them if my idea is a good idea or not. So you actually have to make the thing before you can figure it out. Prototyping is another thing that came up again and again in those processes. That's why we talked about getting your hands dirty. That's why we talked about getting into Sketch early, so come to the jam session on Wednesday. That's why we showed the Ira Glass video who's saying you actually have to do the work. You're going to learn so much when you actually try to make the thing. And then the last one is you have to test it. There's a theme over and over again. You actually have to show it to people and see if they like it. You're not going to be able to figure that out if you don't make the thing. some of these would be like, for this one, why don't we just, or saying like, wouldn't it be cool if we made this thing without actually identifying a need from somebody else? Not you, can't be you, it doesn't count. And again, a bad sign for this would be like, if I made this, would you buy it? Without showing them something that actually solves a problem first. Okay, assignment we talked about already. Let's do next Monday if you're gonna do it. There's a jam session on Wednesday. And I think that's it. Oh, there's a survey we're gonna ask you guys to do. This is another survey for actually somebody in the School of Entrepreneurship who's trying to learn a little bit about people who are taking classes like this. I'd really appreciate it if you would take it. It'll be on Piazza. Any questions? Yeah.
Have you done these on Is it on?
It'll be on Canvas. Assignment turns in on Canvas. Okay, have a good week, guys.